Okay, my computer says 10:30. I don't know if everybody else's does, but let me welcome you all to the November board meeting of the New York State Cemeteries Board. I'm Mark Patterson, and I'll call this meeting to order. I'm in the habit of just doing some extra review of protocols and reviewing the upcoming agenda just to make things work better since we're all on remote. But we're meeting remotely, and later Tony will explain to us the rules of that. The meeting is being recorded. Everybody should mute your phone. Please look down now and see if your phone or device is muted, and so that you can keep the noise down, and we'll all get along better. Also, please, when you are speaking, unmute yourself, which is the trick we all have to learn, and then identify yourself so that we can keep a record of who's speaking. There is a public participation period, particularly then you need to identify yourself, and again, there's rules for we have to take attendance for certain folks. I think we'll go into executive session today with a pretty small agenda, but if we do, we will vote to go in, and we will not adjourn the meeting, but we'll come back out of executive session to report on anything that happened in the executive session, take any action that is required out of the executive session, and then go on to adjourn the meeting. So that's the general protocols. I'll review the agenda in a second. Let's have the board members identify themselves. I'm Mark Patterson. I'm representing Secretary of State Rosanna Rosado. Jill?
Hi, I'm Jill Faber. I'm representing Attorney General Letitia James.
And Tom?
Hi, this is Thomas Fuller. I'm representing Dr. Howard Zucker for the Department of Health.
Great. So we have a full member board meeting there. And so, Tony, would you please go over to us the rules?
I just got an email from Tony. He's having trouble getting into the meeting.
Okay.
I'm here now.
Oh, you're in. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Sorry. Great. So, Tony, I've already reviewed the protocols. I'll go over the agenda, and then you can help us out. But again, this is already in the agenda, but we've explained the new rules. We'll have Tony explain the new rules in the public notice. We'll approve the minutes. We will get a rules, regulations, and legislation report from Tony, a division report from Lewis. We'll have the vandalism report and presentation of vandalism applications and vote. We also have applications for other projects. We have one today. If we are going to go executive session, we'll take a vote on that, and we'll return before we adjourn. So, Tony, can you just go over the new rules and make sure
Sure.
that tell us how we're complying?
Yep. So this meeting is being conducted pursuant to Governor's Executive Order 202.1, which has been extended. Pursuant to that executive order, Article 7 of the Public Officers Law is modified to permit any public body to meet and take action without permitting in public in-person access to meetings, and to authorize such meetings to be held remotely by, by conference call or similar service, provided that the public has the ability to view or listen to such proceeding, and that such meetings are recorded and later transcribed. And in fact, this meeting is being recorded. This executive order has been interpreted to suspend the requirement that board members be physically convened or convened by video conference, to suspend the requirement that notice of the meeting include the physical location of each board member. We've given the public notice of the meeting and how to attend by video conference or by telephone conference. I'll only note there that I tried to attend by the link that we've posted and was having trouble with that, but I do see that there are callers. So at least that portion seems to be working. And it looks like the board agenda and board material have been placed on the Division Cemeteries website. One final note, we are taking attendance. Giving your name and who you represent is voluntary unless you're a lobbyist. Then you must identify yourself and your client, and we ask that anyone who speaks to the board identify themselves.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate that. I don't know if the members have any questions or where we are. I assume not, since we've done this before. Okay, so we have minutes of the last meeting to approve. Does anybody have any corrections or suggested changes to the minutes?
No.
So I'll make a motion to approve.
None here.
Thank you, Tom. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the past meeting as distributed. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved. Tony, do you have a report on legislation and rule of regulation?
Nothing on legislation. I didn't see any changes in the status of any pending legislation. On regulation, we now have put together the procedure for avoiding abandonment with the procedures when abandonment has to occur, either to a town or another cemetery, and we put that all in one document and shared that with a NYSAC.
Okay, and these are informal. Later, when we get to a final or a more advanced stage, there will be a public notice.
Right. Last month, the contents of the draft were discussed, and the board was apprised of, even though you didn't have, I don't think at that time, a draft because it was still being worked on. The contents were discussed, and the board was apprised of what's included in that draft. And we were authorized to share that with the interested parties.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Louis, do you have a division report? And, first of all, anybody have any questions for Tony on his legislation or rules and regulations? Any board members?
No.
Okay. Great. We'll move on to a division report. Louis?
That was my division report. Other than that, I don't really have that much to update us on. We had a spate of continuing ed sessions for funeral directors at the beginning of this cycle. Those seem to have died down a bit. Obviously, we are continuing to monitor both independently through the Mortuary Affairs Task Force what's going on in the world of COVID. But we do monitor. We are still collecting crematory and cemetery data. We're not seeing a significant uptick in burial or cremations yet. There's obviously some variation from week to week, but nothing that would, as of yet, give us cause to start ringing alarm bells. Of course, the way the disease works, we would necessarily be the last people to see that because there's a long incubation period and a long illness period in serious cases, typically. But so far, whatever uptick we're seeing in the state has not translated into a lot of major increases in cremation and burial rates. At least, I should put a caveat there. Burial rates, we're only monitoring selected cemeteries. Crematories, we monitor all of them. And that is all I have.
Okay. Does anybody, board members, have questions for Louis?
Oh, no question, but I just wanted to comment that I have spoke with several of the funeral directors down in the city. They have noticed an uptick in COVID cases, but I specifically asked them if there were any backlog or delay with disposition, and none of them have seen that happen. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
One possible explanation for the divergent comments that Tom and I are giving is there are certain funeral directors in New Jersey who typically bring their cremation cases to New Jersey. I would not know about those, where the division would know about those, but Tom would. Or Tom would potentially, at least. I don't know if that's the explanation, but that is one little wrinkle there.
Okay.
To either of you, any of the directors that you spoke with anticipate, based on current conditions and what happened, 3 or 4 months ago, that do they anticipate that there will be backlogs and concerns about the process going forward, or are they confident that with what they know and what they have in place that they'll be able to meet the demand?
Well, I think I could maybe speak to that, having spoken with the funeral directors. I wouldn't say they're anticipating a problem. They're anxious that there could be one, but things did come into place over April, May, in those areas to handle that kind of a surge. So they're a little more confident that they won't be caught in the situations that they were caught in back in April.
Okay.
So it's helpful.
Okay, any other questions for the division report? Louis? All right, Louis or Alicia, the vandalism report?
Alicia?
I'll do it.
Thanks.
We've collected in the calendar year 2020, vandalism collections are $458,627. Assessment collections are $261,525. Fiscal year from April 1st, 2020, vandalism $74,295. Assessment $4,693. We still have $483,067.74 unpaid vandalism applications from prior years. And we have $827,987.10 available for future applications from the 2021 appropriation. We have 4 applications going before the board today: 1 vandalism, 2 restoration of hazardous monuments, and 1 abandonment.
Right.
Annual reports, 1,299 collected for 2019, 29% of which have been filed online.
Pretty steady state. Okay, anybody have any questions for Alicia on the vandalism report?
No.
All right, thank
No,
you.
not here.
So we have 4 applications. The first one is the town of, or the Morton Union Cemetery in Orleans County. That is a vandalism. Does anyone want to report that?
Abandonment
No, that's an abandonment.
Sorry, I got the wrong one up. Somebody want to present that?
Mike, you wanna?
Yes, this is Mike Seelman from the Division of Cemeteries. Morton Union Cemetery took over, was taken over by the town of Kendall. The town of Kendall applied for funds for maintenance of the abandoned cemetery, including fencing, monument repair, equipment, and a survey. There were additional requests for reimbursement of actions that the town had taken previous to the conveyance. I went out and looked at it and determined, or am recommending that the division approves, $36,634. That's for the survey, the fence, the monument repair, and the equipment.
Okay. And Tony, do you have anything to add to this application?
I do have a few observations on this one. Like a couple of others we've seen recently, there's a question of whether this was an involuntary abandonment or a voluntary conveyance transfer of the cemetery to the municipality under NPCL 1506J. As we did in the past, I would recommend that the board have an opportunity to look at the correspondence, paper, digital, otherwise. So it has the background on this, so we can determine based on the correspondence, which it was, whether it was an abandonment and therefore an application for abandonment funds is appropriate, or whether it was a voluntary transfer, in which case application for abandonment funds would not be appropriate. Assuming it is a proper application for abandonment funds, I have no objection to what's being sought. I'll point out that there is a request for reimbursement for a land survey expense, which is not among the listed items, but the survey was done in order to permit the town to put a fence around the property, and a fence is specifically permitted. So since the survey expense relates to the expense of a permitted fence expense, council has no objection to that. And one last item, if, this has come up in the drafting of the abandonment regs. I think this is a good time to raise it. If this were a voluntary takeover under 1506J, it has occurred to me that could be subject to not-for-profit corporation law Article 10, non-judicial dissolution, and that falls under the jurisdiction of the Office of Attorney General. So I'd like to know the position of the Attorney General on that. Not expecting an answer today, but I raised the question so that it's something we can discuss.
And thank you, Tony. I did get a chance to consider that. And although, as you said, I don't have a response on behalf of the agency, but what I can say is that, where there's a voluntary non-judicial dissolution, a petition would need to be filed, with a proposed plan of dissolution. That plan of dissolution would then need to be approved by the Attorney General's office, and then the actual dissolution of assets as identified in the plan of dissolution would be accomplished thereafter. So it is a different process than what's contemplated in 1506J, although certainly as a not-for-profit corporation, a cemetery could avail itself of the non-judicial, dissolution process in Article 10. So, I think what you're asking about is whether there's a particular protocol that OAG would recommend, or if there's any inconsistency or any indicia as to which process a corporation should take. And as I said, I can't comment on that now, but I do think it's a really interesting and important question that you raised that we should look into further.
And just to provide a little bit more background, one of the reasons I raise it is it's always been my understanding, based on the way the statute is structured, that if a cemetery sells all its property, a sale of all its land is treated separately under Section 1506 versus a sale of a portion of its land. I think the reason for that is if it sells all its land, that is a dissolution, and the dissolution would apply. I've never thought that the dissolution procedures would apply to an involuntary abandonment, because that certainly looks like a different process. This one, a voluntary transfer under 1506J, is somewhere in between the two. So I was never sure. So that's what kind of made me raise it.
Because it's a voluntary dissolution of all the assets. And so at the end, we're looking at the same result, whether the result happens via the 1506 process or a voluntary non-judicial dissolution under Article 10. All of the assets are transferred.
So those are the issues I have, Mark. Thanks.
Thank you. Does the division have additional information to present in terms of whether this was a involuntary dissolution or a voluntary conveyance?
Well, I think Mike's memo mentioned discussed actually in Mike's memo, but as he discusses there, the town did not want to take the cemetery. In fact, one of the reasons it was providing maintenance for all those years was to try to keep from having to take it. There was no longer a functioning board after the treasurer died. And the town believed that it had no choice but to take it because the cemetery was at that point functionally abandoned. The town understood the conveyance procedure to be the way that it would take on an abandoned cemetery in the accounts. We were not in a position to tell it otherwise because we didn't find out about this till after the fact.
Is there anybody from the town that is here to speak to this issue, or anybody else?
That's based on what the town provided to Mike, just to be clear.
Just asking. So the division has recommended that this be approved as an involuntary, I don't know if I'm using the right language, dissolution.
Hello?
Would be an abandonment.
Abandonment, sorry. So I'll just put a motion on the table for purpose of at least discussion. I'll make a motion to approve the application of the town of Kendall for the Morton Union Cemetery for administrative abandonment funds in the amount of $126,426.27.
The amount that the division recommends is actually $36,634.
Yeah, I just didn't read it right. So let me amend my motion to approve the application in the amount of $36,634.
Okay.
I have a second. We can have an additional discussion.
I'll second that.
So is there any other discussion? We've looked at the correspondence. Do board members have an opinion in this regard? My view, just as I don't really ever understand why anybody would not pursue it as an abandonment. It's just not in their general interest. So it seems to me there's ample evidence that that's what happened, was an abandonment, and that the town took it over pursuant to that and is eligible for the one-time abandonment funds. Any others? Go ahead.
No, I agree with you in this case, Mark. I think that's right, given what's outlined and given the information that we have. But because this has come up a number of times, and it seems like the analysis is very, very fact specific, and looking at the chronology, I would just suggest that we are very careful to request as much information as we can going forward, so that we can unpack exactly what happened, because I think it behooves us to rather than after the fact second guess what the intent was. Although I agree with you that here I think it's clear. In some cases it might not be as clear, and so I think beforehand we should get division should get as much information as they can, so that we can clearly identify the intent and how the corporation went forward based on that intent.
And I think, we previously denied an application
Yes.
because they could not provide sufficient information to make that case. So
And it might even be, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I agree with what you're suggesting.
And I was going to say that, it might even be that we division provides, some guidance or information, so that when municipalities and cemeteries are contemplating a transfer, they understand exactly, what is required and how they need to present it, as, if it's abandoned, what we really need to review to determine that that's been an abandonment. I think it's important, just if there's any confusion out there.
Yeah, good suggestion. I agree with that.
Yeah, well, we're already doing that.
Okay.
Number two, just to clarify, the board didn't actually deny Cicero's application.
Yeah, they withdrew.
and then they withdrew. And part of the reason they withdrew is that the former cemetery officials swore up and down until they were blue in the face that they absolutely in no way, shape, or form abandoned the cemetery.
Thank you for the correction. Tom, any additional comments?
No, I agree with what Joe was saying, and the fact that we got history going back to 2012, where the town was doing the maintenance. I think that shows that what the intentions were rather of the parties involved.
I have a motion on the table. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The application is approved, subject to fund availability, which we always say. Next on the agenda is I've lost my agenda. What's next on the agenda?
Wading River.
Wading River. Okay, so can we have 7% Wading River?
That's a vandalism application.
Okay. Somebody present it?
Terry, you on?
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry, I was muted. I went to Wading River. Wading River is asking for money to repair one stone, the stone of Angelica Brown, which was found broken, according to the cemeterian, this summer, and was reported in June. I went and visited the cemetery in September, on September 11th, to see the stone. And the stone looked to me as though it had been broken for some time. There are several aspects of it that make me believe that. The lichen and fungus growth on the stone is also on the break surface, and I was a bit curious about it. And I examined the application and saw that the cemeterian reported it to the police, the local police, and received a report, but it still seemed to me that it had been broken for some time. I then looked on the web to confirm my suspicions and saw that there were pictures of the break that were several years older than what was reported. So I don't really recommend approval of this application based on that.
Okay, Tony, do you have anything to add?
Yes, thanks, Mark. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, I'm Janice Gilmore from Wading River Cemetery. I was wondering if I could speak to that.
Yeah, why don't you wait till I ask for your
Oh, I'm sorry.
No
Sure.
problem. Just want all the opinions on the table, and then we'll glad to hear from you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So the regulations do require, there are timing aspects to the regulations. The report of vandalism has to be made to division verbally or in writing within 30 days of discovery of an act of vandalism. And the cemetery has to submit a complete application with 6 months of the date of discovery. The 6-month period can be extended by the board. There's nothing in the statute of reg which permits extension of the 30-day requirement, that the notification to division verbally or in writing within 30 days of discovery. Division has provided photographic proof that and physical proof that this is a very old damage, and it certainly would appear because there's photos, I think, going back to 2014 at least, showing this damage, that it would have had to have been known if it was in fact vandalism well in the past. So I would support the division's recommendation to deny the application as untimely.
Yes, okay. Is there somebody from the cemetery wishing to address this matter?
I would.
Identify yourself, please, Janice.
I'm Janice Gilmore, and I'm a trustee from the Wading River Cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
I think a key piece that's missing here is many of our stones up there are old, have been repaired, and Angelica Brown is one of them. This was the damage that the lichen and everything else. This is a stone that had been repaired many years ago and was in good shape. The vandalism is as we reported. It was new. This stone is right on the edge of the road as you exit the cemetery. It's very visible every time you go up and down, into the cemetery and everything else. This was the first time that we have filed a vandalism claim. So I tried to follow their application in that 200.11 that Lewis, all that information that he gave me. But I think the claim is being denied because there was an old fix for that stone. It was repaired many years ago. What happened was, and when it was fixed, the stone is at an angle where it was fixed. So it is, I don't know if I can explain that correctly, but the fix is at an angle. And it is lower in the front, which is the west. If this stone had, if the fix had given way, and it was just old age again, and the stone fell over because the repair had not held, it would have fallen toward the west. It would have fallen face forward because that was the direction of the stone. It's 4 inches thick. I sent a picture last night to Lewis. I don't know if everyone received it. That was a picture that I had taken about a week after I had noticed the stone was down. And it shows that the stone fell backwards toward the east, which would have been impossible with the way that stone has been cracked, and it was flipped upside down. So there was clear vandalism there. I think that I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly enough, but or clearly enough, but I think the denial is based on the fact that you think that that repair was the new break. It wasn't. This was damaged and it broke where it had been repaired before.
So you've added additional documentation just yesterday. So I don't know if the division has any response to that. I mean,
I could respond to that if you would like me to opine
no,
about.
Well, I mean, all I was noting was that it just came in, so that I don't know if the division has had time to particularly review it. I mean, we're in a position where, even though this is a very small claim, we have to make sure that the rules are followed. So we can't just say, oh, it's only a couple $100, but still we have to make sure that we've got documentation that justifies the claim and meets the test of the statute. You have added some additional information. I don't know if the division has a point of view about that, and I'm not meaning to cut you off, Ms. Gilmore. If there's something else that you want to add, please feel free.
Well, I was looking through the memo from Kerry, and I did have a few, I guess, questions in case we ever file again, but also it said that the cemetery didn't post the required legal notice. We do not have any contact information for this family. This woman passed away at the beginning of the 1900s. I looked through that 200.11 information that Lewis had given me. I don't see anything in there. And I don't see anything on the application itself that says that there's supposed to be required legal notice. I'm not sure what that refers to. Also that we didn't include a photograph of the monument with the application. The application does list 3 things you need to provide: a description of the damage, copies of the police report, and 2 estimates, which we did provide, but nowhere did it say you also have to provide a photograph. I would have, had I known I needed to do that. It's also said there was no record of vandalism being reported to the division, but I had sent a copy of the email that Lewis had sent back to me confirming that I had spoken to him that day. and had reported the vandalism to him. The police report, it says that there's no clear indication that an officer was dispatched to the site. So I also submitted last night via email the handwritten information that the police officer gave to me the day he was at the cemetery with me, noting the criminal mischief. And it says based on conflicting dates, I'm not sure what that was referring to. Required posted notice, again, I don't see where that's even listed. That I'm not even sure what that is. And the non-specific police report, I can't control what the police report is in the town of Riverhead. They did come, we did meet, and he did take his report from me and observe the stone itself. He also agreed that there was no way, the way that original break was, that this stone could have fallen backwards on its own and flipped itself over. So they also have to confirm and agree that this is mischief before they'll even write it up. So that's what I have, unless I have any, you have any questions that I can answer for you.
Thank you, Ms. Gilmore. Does the division have anything to add, given what we've just heard or the pictures that we're seeing just recently?
I can say that I did examine the stone when I was there. I didn't see any evidence of previous repair. And I will also say that I am trained as an archaeologist and have many, many years of experience. So I did actually take a look to see, and I did note the lichen and did note that I did not see any evidence of prior repair. As for the notification to the division, I do not recall the email, so I stated that, but absolutely, if you reported it, I completely concur. I believe that you did to the division.
To be clear, we're not recommending denial because they didn't submit a picture or because of the defect in notification. We're recommending denial because at best, or at most for the cemetery, this was old vandalism. And perhaps, at least that's what we believe, and perhaps not, I mean, we don't know what caused it, but it was.
Right. So
I would add,
If anybody
Mark,
wants, I can screen share the photo that the cemetery shared with us.
Louis, I'm not sure that would
Okay.
be appropriate in the public, because the public won't have an opportunity to see that.
Well, anybody who's logged in via via
but
video.
not by call.
Yeah, there's a lot of call-ins though.
Okay.
But I just want to address the point of publication. The regs do require that that if you can't identify the family member, that notice be published in the newspaper, and that the application should include a copy of the newspaper notice. So that's where that comes in. That's in letter D, Roman numeral 4. And so if the board is of the view to grant this, it should be conditioned on a subsequent publication.
Okay. Do you have any comment from other board members? I mean, we're not, I don't have a motion on the table, so it's preliminary.
I guess my only question, it seems like it comes down to the issue of whether, based on the division's observation and the report, that the damage was old rather than new. And I understand that the representative of the cemetery has said that's not accurate, and explained exactly how the vandalism that they're asking us to consider now is new. Is given the new information that she's provided today, I ask the investigators whether there's anything else that could be considered, and perhaps, if appropriate, the report amended or not, either recommendation amended or not. It does seem like there's some new information that the division might want to take some time to consider.
This is Mike Seelman. I do think that if we were provided a copy of the police report, it may shed some more light on this.
Why don't I make a motion that we table this application for now? Again, we're still the state, but we don't, you know, I don't always like it. It's sometimes are required and understandable regulations trip up those who are unaware of all the rules. And I think that's what the division is there for, is to do their best to make sure that our cemeteries are aware and supported in justifiable applications. So I'll make a motion that we table this application, even though it's only $200, just to see if there's additional information that cures our concerns.
Well, they're gonna be back here soon anyway. I got an email from Ms. Gilmore that they've identified 2 other what they believe to be recently vandalized stones. Those may well be legitimate claims. We haven't looked at them yet, and we're gonna have to come back before the board on the cemetery anyway. So maybe we can deal with them all together.
Okay, but you know, again, it's a very small claim. So, so I would make the motion to table this application for further investigation. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other conversation?
Should that motion be based on them also making a notice, public notice?
There's no sense in them publishing a notice if we don't think it's a proper claim. I don't want them to waste the money on that.
Right. Well,
Okay.
we're going to do further investigation to see if there are things that would change the investigator's view of this, or the council's view of this. So it would include, if appropriate, notice and police report and other documentation. So is there anything else that you want to add to the motion?
I'm good.
All in favor?
All right.
Motion to table. Is approved.
One more question. I just wanted to ask, when you put in an application like this, and if the state feels that there's lacking information or a little has some questions based on it, is it routine to reach out to the cemetery to get that information or not?
Absolutely. That was an oversight on my part, not sharing the write-up with you last week.
Oh, well, even before the write-up, I was thinking when Terry was looking at it and she had so many questions and everything
I
else.
didn't have any questions about it. I had
Sorry.
a firm opinion that this was an old break.
I mean, normally, what we would normally do if we don't have any, we would share with you our negative recommendation more significantly in advance of the meeting.
Oh, okay.
But in this case, we can also work with you to make sure that for the assuming we think that those are a legitimate claim, to make sure that the legal notice is properly done and all that, so it just sails through at the next meeting.
Yes, I did want to just notify you of those too.
Yeah,
So
no, I got that. Thank you.
if they don't result in any expense to us, we're not going to pursue that, obviously. One of them we were able to put back up on the base by ourselves. So
Well, we'll take a look. If there is one that looks like you are going to want to put in for it, Carrie can take a look at it first before you go through the expense of publishing.
okay.
So,
Thank you so much.
Ms. Gilmore, I just want to say for the record, we understand that that you're a volunteer and that like a lot of the cemeteries, sometimes coming to the state to get through our processes is daunting. We appreciate your efforts in the cemetery. We don't want to be bureaucratic, but as I said, we're still a state and have certain requirements that we have to make sure are filled. But thank you for what you do, what your board does in maintaining the cemetery, and we do try to be as helpful as possible where we can. So that's what the point of tabling the this particular application is to sort of put it back into the division's hands to see if, again, not doubting what Carrie's review is at all, but maybe there's some other information that makes a difference And again, just frankly, if you had other applications, a $200 check's hard to, that's a small check. So anyway, thank you for your service, and we will hopefully be back in touch with you to help make sure you understand the process.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I think next on the list is Attica Cemetery. Is that right?
Correct.
It is.
Mike?
This is Mike Seelman again. Attica Cemetery filed a claim for 26 hazardous monuments. Cindy Craig went out and reviewed the monuments and determined that they did appear to be hazardous. We've recommended approval for $27,167.22 for the repair of these monuments. One interesting thing about this is they were only able to get one estimate for repair work. They did receive 2 letters from other monument dealers in the Western New York region that declined to do the work. I looked at the last 10 approved applications in Western New York and came up with an average. And the average of the one bid that we have in this case is, let's see, I'm sorry. $1,042. The average high bid was $1,279 per monument. And the average low bid was $1,085. So it does seem to fall within there. Other than that, it's a pretty routine application.
Thank you, Mike. Tony, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, if, this coincides with the request last month that since we're seeing more of these where the cemetery is only able to get one bid, that we amend the regulations to provide a mechanism for the approval and what the board would require, which the board agreed that the regs should be amended in that regard. So the 2 issues are, what is sufficient proof that the board made, that the cemetery made sufficient effort to get another bid, and what is adequate evidence of the reasonableness of the one bid that they got. So if any board member wants to provide us input, since we are working on those regs as to what they view as adequate on each issue, that would be helpful. I would point out that this is also going to be the case in the next application you're going to hear. And in that application, the bid is a little higher than I think the highest average bid. So, the issues are present in these 2 applications.
Okay, so are there any other questions on this application from Attica Cemetery in Wyoming County?
Yeah, I have a question for Mike Seelman. The other 2 contractors both said they lacked staff and equipment to complete the jobs. Did they say why they were lacking that? Or is that a temporary issue, COVID related, or anything else that they indicated why they would not bid on something that could, help their bottom line?
This application was submitted prior to COVID, so I don't think it would be related to that. But they did not provide anything additional. We have received, when we look at these, so I talked about the average price per monument. Sometimes we see applications where they'll put in for 20 monuments, and many of the monuments are 6, 7, 8 foot tall obelisks, several pieces, huge foundations, and those prices are higher. And then other times there are smaller monuments that have a lower average price. Specifically, I don't know about these 2 monument dealers. They have submitted applications in the past. It's possible they just don't have the equipment. Western New York Cemetery Service is the one contractor that submitted the application, and they have quite a substantial operation, and they're able to do work. In fact, we've seen where they've done work in other parts of the state that local contractors could not do or could do at a much higher rate because they had to rent equipment or something like that. I don't
Okay,
have any
that sounds-
specific, I don't have any specifics on this situation. Sorry.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Related to what you just said, Tony, is there a requirement or any particular form that we ask cemeteries to use to indicate how many companies they've reached out to, or the extent to which they've attempted to get more than one bid, or is it a state, or do they make a statement that we've attempted and we haven't been able to? What do we require, or what's typical?
Yeah, I mean, Lewis can probably address this as well, but it's been the standard that we get 2 bids, and so we never go beyond just looking at what the 2 bids say. And I don't think we've ever seen more than 2 bids, because that's all that's required.
That's not exactly true. The times, although it's a very narrow exception, where we had one situation where we had the cemetery and another party who was arguably a related party bid. And in those cases, we've asked them to try to get a 3rd bid.
So as to situations where we only get 1 bid, my impression, it's been pretty ad hoc as to what evidence division has obtained from the cemetery. We don't have anything formal that I'm aware of that says if you only get 1 bid, this is what you have to provide us. But again, Lewis can expound on that.
Basically, we asked them what efforts you made to try to get more than 1 bid. Why wouldn't they bid? And then we do the analysis Mike just did, is how does this compare to the average in the area?
Something else that we've done in the past, if in this case, in the one following, the cemetery was aware that they needed 2 bids. They they attempted to get the 2 bids, and they asked for something in writing from the people who were refusing to provide a bid. In other cases, we have received applications with just 1 bid and no explanation of why there's 1 bid. And generally, we'll ask the cemetery what was the case here, and they'll say, well, we called several, and this is the only one that responded. And maybe not several times, but there have been multiple times where we've requested that the cemetery post an ad solicitation. So they'd have their legal notice requesting that the lot owners come forward and check for insurance benefits, but they would also have a legal notice soliciting bids, explaining, the cemetery, the detention contractors in the area were soliciting bids for such. And then sometimes that'll result in the 2nd bid. But if not, then they'll just write a statement. They'll include the affidavit that they posted the ad, and then they'll have a statement that they had no response.
So the only thing I'll add to Mike's additional information is I did note that one of the companies that refused to give a bid on this one also refused to give a bid on the next application. So I do have a concern about cemeteries going to a business that they know is going to say no to them. That they make a real concerted effort to find someone who's actually going to provide a bid. And division has indicated that in some cases that it's getting harder and harder because one company always ends up being the low bidder, and these other companies seem to be giving up on competing with that consistent low bidder. So that sounds like it's a developing problem.
Any other discussion? I can't remember if I put this on the table or not. Did I make a motion to approve the application from Attica Cemetery for hazardous monuments in the amount of $27,107.22? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. That application is approved contingent on the availability of funding. Our last vandalism is Oakwood Cemetery in Erie County. Somebody want to present that?
Oakwood Cemetery applied for repair of 31 hazardous monuments. Again, Cindy Craig went out, looked at the monuments, and determined that they appeared to be hazardous. Again, we have one estimate from Western New York Cemetery Services for $36,184. This average, as Tony said, it's a little bit higher than the other one. It's $1,167 per monument. I used the same information on the last 10 approved bids. And again, the low average is $1,085. The high average is $1,297. And this is $1,167. And we recommend approval in the amount of $36,264.50.
Tony, do you have anything to add here other than the number of bids?
No, nothing to add beyond what I've already discussed on the previous application.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the application of Oakwood Cemetery in Erie County for hazardous monuments to be around $36,264.50. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Jill. And any other discussion by board members on this? I think the conversation is about the number of bids and things we're struggling with. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, subject to the availability of funding. We have one other application from non-hazardous or non-vandalism from Evergreen Cemetery for a columbarium. Lewis, who's going to present that?
Mike?
This is Mike Seelman again. Evergreen Cemetery in Oneida County has proposed installing a 72-niche columbarium unit. They don't have one currently, and they've discussed it with area funeral directors and other actually lot owners, and found that there's interest in a columbarium. The total proposal is $90,628. That does not include the permanent maintenance allocation. I went out and looked at the site. It's kind of adjacent to their newer section, which is filling up. I talked to the superintendent. He said they've had 15 people, based on word of mouth and the posting of the signs at the cemetery entrances and at the site, express interest in purchasing columbarium. The division recommends approval of this.
Tony, do you have anything to add?
Just a couple of comments. It looks like the public notice did not include the address to send comments, but as Mike pointed out, comments were received. So it does look like the notice was effective. I'll also point out that the contractor providing and installing the columbarium is owned by a board member. And the division's report details the procedures that was followed. Initially, that board member participated in the discussion and vote. Division advised them that that was not appropriate and that they needed another bid. At that first vote, that was the only bid. So they received a second bid. The second bid was higher. The board met again. The board member who runs the company participated in the discussion again, but it appears that that person did not vote. As long as this complies with Office of Attorney General standards on conflict of interest and related party transaction, I don't see any objection on that aspect. I would only point out that although this is the lower bid, the higher bid provides a full perpetual warranty, and this lower bid is silent as far as I can see on any warranty. Those are my only comments.
I have a question. Do we have, as part of the application, the minutes of the meeting where there was, the second meeting where there was discussion around? We don't. Because the board member in question recused him or herself, but you said was still a participant in the discussion that then resulted in a vote? Is that?
Yeah, that's what, Louis, do we have the minutes of that?
Yeah,
Second meeting?
they're included as Exhibit C.
Okay.
My understanding is the way this works is that there's a specific authorization party to be there to provide information about from his or her side of the story, about the bid. And it's not always not having an actual video or audio recording of the meeting. It's hard to see exactly what beyond that, what if anything beyond that the person did. This is a case where they had initially approved it without following the procedure. We told them, no, you can't do that. They actually met again to ensure the recusal.
So my concern is if that board member was present during the vote, because that could have a chilling effect on the other board members. It could impact their vote, how they vote, if that person's present, in my mind. But what I'm not sure is what's the Office of Attorney General's view on that issue is.
Yeah, it's why I'd like to see the minutes or get some more information about the conversation. Particularly because this was the second discussion, and although maybe very good, business reasons, financial reasons for going with the interested board member's company, the second vote was to go with that company. So is there anybody that we can hear from? Is there anybody from the cemetery president could give some information about that the factors that were discussed in the second board discussion that resulted in the vote?
Yes. Yeah.
Louis, I also remind somebody to mute your phone if you're not speaking. If you're typing in the background and some other noise, please look down and see if your device is muted. Is there someone from the cemetery that is here to speak?
Yeah. Hear me?
I can. Identify yourself.
Hey, my name is Scott. I'm the superintendent of Evergreen Cemetery. I'm also here with Bill Chrysler, who is the president of the association, and Ed Davis, who is the vice president of the association. Yes, once Mr. Ron Hunt, once he recused himself, where he could no longer vote, he did leave. And as far as the columbarium, the column, it's the same thing. They're both with Rock of Ages. They both have lifetime warranties on them for workmanship and craftsmanship.
Okay, so you're saying that in the second meeting, the board member with the related party interest was there to explain, answer questions about his bid, but then he left the meeting before the vote was taken.
Correct. He was not in the room for the vote. We had to read. We didn't have a one of the policies in place. The what is it? The
Related party.
yeah. So he was there. We had to go over that. We adopted that, and then after that, he had left, so that he was not part of the vote.
Okay.
So if I'm understanding, it sounds like he was there as a representative of the company to give specific information to the board upon which they could then discuss the bids and decide which one to go with. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay. But he did not participate in that discussion, only the presentation of the information. Is that
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for the representatives of Evergreen?
Just to clarify, it sounds like what the representative said is that the two bids involve the same columbarium from the same manufacturer, so they both come with the same manufacturer warranty. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions from members of the board?
None here.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the application of Evergreen Cemetery for a columbarium, and I lost the amount of that.
104.
Yeah.
104,268. Is that correct?
Great. Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion about this application? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is approved. Before we go to executive session, let me just say that the next board meeting is, I think, December 8th. Is that right, Louis?
That's correct, Mark.
Okay, it's the first time I've remembered to do it without being prompted. And let me just move to public participation. This is the opportunity for anyone to speak to the board on any matter. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the board at this time? Please identify yourself first.
Hi, it's David Fleming from the New York State Association of Cemeteries. Good afternoon. I just wanted to touch base on a couple of things. We've had this conversation before, and I commend Mr. Malillo for bringing it up about the need to change the regulation. I see it myself all over the state that we're just in a situation where there are fewer and fewer companies that are available to provide bids for monument repair. It's becoming more and more specialized. And there is, issues where companies are just refusing to submit a bid because there's so much work involved, and they feel like they're never going to get the bid anyway. So they just decline to provide any assistance to the cemeteries. And even in really populated areas like the capital region, it can be extremely difficult to get anyone to get back to you with multiple bids. So that is an issue, and happy to work with the division and the board on changing that regulation so we can address some of the criteria that was talked about today. I then just wanted to just briefly thank our regulatory partners again for constantly being in touch with the association as we face the potential of a second wave from COVID. And obviously our concerns are significant, particularly for our metropolitan partners who are dealing usually with these upticks, and we see it particularly in Western New York. And fortunately, we've continued to be in contact over the summer and the fall and work with the association and providing some additional resources to the state to monitor some of potential upticks. So thank you for DOH, DOS in particular, and working with us on that. I would also like to just say that, we've been in this COVID situation, we've seen a number of situations where there's a shortage of supplies that you would not anticipate that we would see a shortage, in particular in body bags, and body bags that are standard for the industry for cremation. And so we've seen some, I guess it's mostly coroners who have used crash bags, which are these heavy vinyl bags. And they've resulted in some DEC complaints about smoke. And just for the public record and to reiterate, our cemeteries can't open the container that arrives at the cemetery. We have no idea crash in the cremation container. And that can cause a tremendous amount of smoke if the cemeteries, the crematories aren't aware of that smoke. So we have actually reached out to the Funeral Directors Association, and we're hoping to see if we can get some kind of either label or marking on the outside of the containers so that the crematory operators are aware that there would be a crash bag within the container so that we can adjust the crematory appropriately. But that's all I had. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, David. Are there other members of the public wishing to speak to the board on any matter? Okay. So thank you all for your attendance. I'm going to make a motion that we move to executive session. I'm correct, right, Louis or Tony, that we need to go to executive session?
We do have one matter to consider in executive session.
And that matter is
It's an investigation.
Action. Okay, so again, to remind the public that we are not adjourning. We are gonna, you can stay on the call. We're gonna move to a different remote room. So that
Mark,
they can
before
be
everybody
separated.
jumps off, sorry, Mark, it's Josh. Before everybody jumps off, I don't think there's a WebEx for the executive session, so somebody's gonna have to send that out real
So
quick.
there is. I think we
There
just
is.
forgot to send it to you.
My apologies.
I'll forward it to you. No, I apologize for not sending it to you.
That was my bad.
So I'm going to
Done.
make a motion that we move to executive session for purposes of discussing an investigation. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jill. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We will be back. So here we are. We're back in session. We're coming back in session for the New York State Cemetery Board meeting. No action was taken in executive session, and so there's nothing to report. I don't think there's any other business, so I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting, and our next meeting is December 8th. So a second for the meeting to adjourn.
Second.
Second from Jill. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all very much for our participation. We appreciate it.